Yeah, screw this. I'm going back inside. I like indie games a lot. I feel like I spend so much time talking about the retro games that I enjoy that I often forget to mention the indie games that I play significantly more than you'd think. Now, I didn't really get into the indie scene until I got the Nintendo Switch. That's primarily because I would be hosting a lot of game nights and I needed 4 to 8 player games, and the first party ones were far and few in between. Thankfully, the indie games picked up a lot of that slack. There were a few single player ones that I played here and there, but for the most part, my fill of indie games have been multiplayer. But obviously, indie games are more than just the quick 1 or 2 hit party game. A lot of people enjoy them for the simplicity of their aesthetics, but the complexity in their design. And it's not to say that these are ugly games by any means, but a lot of them end up taking that magic that you would see in a retro title and modernizing it with some of the most beautiful visuals you will ever see on the console. Now, unfortunately, I got a very one-track mind in the way that I game. I would say a vast majority of my gaming time is done on the couch with people next to me. Not necessarily a couch co-op because we're not playing together. Not quite split-screen gaming either because the games aren't split-screen, but you know, the old school multiplayer sitting on the couch next to each other, being able to see the person's face next to you when you hit them with a blue shell. I don't particularly know what every single genre is. I'll hear different names pop up, different words being said, but I couldn't tell you what the difference was between a roguelike and a roguelite, or if there is even a full rogue. But what I can tell you is that there are a lot of indie games that I see their names pop up, and I know that people love them. And I know that I've enjoyed games like Shovel Knight, Golf Story, and the Untitled Goose Game. Now, the funny thing is, in my ignorance, I also don't know when these different developers get brought out. Sometimes when an indie gets big enough, is it really an indie anymore? I don't know where that line is. I have a general rule of thumb. If the game looks like the games I played as a kid, it is probably an indie game. If the game is a lot of fun, it is probably an indie game. If the game feels like it was made by somebody that is very passionate about what they were doing, it is probably an indie game. And the nice thing about indie games is that they are limited in their resources. That sounds like a flaw, right? Why would I say that's nice? Well, it's because when you have your limitations, you have to find a way to appeal to people using your passion. It's a lot like YouTubing, for example. You got a lot of these channels that have millions of followers and they probably have a whole team of editors, top quality editing, all the fun little bursts of energy and the screams in the background and all the editing prowess being put into skill, finding different ways to keep you engaged at all times. But sometimes it's fun to listen to the little guys that just sound like they're passionate about what they're talking about. But this also comes with the many drawbacks. At least with the big ones, you kinda know you're gonna get a certain level of quality. It may not be the best video, they might not have the best breaking news, and their opinions might be fairly generic based off of what the crowds enjoy. But you know when you click on their thumbnail, there's a level of quality. With the little guys, sometimes it's hard to get through their videos. And I know this not only as somebody that has had historically a very short retention rate on my analytics, but I also know this as somebody that saw a thumbnail was phenomenal and a title was great, and then as soon as I clicked on it, they couldn't keep my attention for more than 45 seconds. In the indie world, it's the same problem. They have the passion, but they don't always have the resources. They have the vision, but they don't always have the manpower. But amongst all of these darts that are being launched at the dartboard at the same time, a large chunk of them will hit the board, and a small handful of them will land right in the center. And many times, those ones that hit, ooh, they hit really good. The passion ends up aligning with the quality. And even think about the origin stories of all of these big developers, right? Go outside of gaming. All of the big guys in Silicon Valley, they have a story where they started out in the back of their garage, and they were all broke college kids at one point. If you believe these stories, at least. But even if they're exaggerated stories, you can still take lessons from those stories. They use their passion and their brains to find a way to get started. But then after they hit big, well, now we're on the iPhone 16. Even many of these first-party developers that we enjoy, it's not usually a surprise to people when they find out how limited they were when they had to make Super Mario Bros. They used the same textures for the cloud and the bushes, because they were limited, so they had to get creative. Now, I'm not saying that AAA games aren't fun, but they can get by on the visuals, they can get by on the music, they can get by on the name. But the indies, they gotta grasp onto you and they have to impress you. And usually they have to be humble about their prices because they realize who they're competing against. It allows many of them to be very consumer friendly. They will reply to emails. They will be active on the social networks that are asking them questions about their games. They will listen to the fans and provide bug fixes. They will give you free demos and sometimes even offer a refund if you don't like the game that you bought. Because even if you remove the fact that they might actually be good people, even if hypothetically speaking in a position of power they might have been the jerky AAA title, they're gonna have to at least pretend to care about the customer. How else are they going to grow? Now, that being said, this isn't usually the case. Most indie developers I've heard great things about. But, sometimes there's a story that slips through the cracks. Regardless, as a customer looking for a game to play, you want to be treated right, and you want to feel like you're buying something that had a decent amount of effort put into it. If Nintendo were to drop a game for $40, I would usually question, why is this game $40? Because I know that Nintendo will not charge $40 for this title if they can get away with more, but an indie dev pricing something at $5, $10, or $15, maybe even $20, I know passion went into that project. I know they didn't take massive shortcuts that would drastically affect the title. This is similar to what I was alluding to in my conversation about handheld games. We used to get these games that were designed for these weaker hardware Nintendo handhelds, and with the limitation of that very handheld, I saw Nintendo throw their heart and soul into titles to sell you for $40, where you would enjoy it potentially even more than the console counterpart. Nintendo obviously is no longer doing this because their handheld is a hybrid console, but the indies, they are. Then again, I say this as somebody that's mostly playing dumb 4-player one-hit games. Whenever I watch an indie direct, it's filled with games and genres that I would never even think about playing. Or whenever I see a YouTuber discuss the upcoming indie games that are about to drop, I hear and see these games that are just not appealing to me. But clearly, there is an ocean of people that are obsessed with these kind of games because they're always talked about. So I know that I'm in the minority, and that's okay, because I'm still getting my fill. I'm just going to mention a few of the ones that I love because these ones have been pretty much a staple of game nights with me and my friends. Boomerang Fu, your fruits throwing boomerangs at each other. 6 players, phenomenal. Just all these quick bursts of crazy mayhem. You have Clusterpuck 99, very simple in its design, but you'd be surprised how much fun it is when you're playing this 8 players, even 6 players. The only downside here, and I might just not have the latest updated version, is that since launch you could only play this with Joy-Cons if you're playing more than 4 players. And I only have 4 Joy-Cons, so we're kind of limited if people don't show up with their extra Joy-Cons, and that's an issue. But there has seldom been a time where I've taken this game out and we haven't had a blast. Night Squad 2. We actually started with Night Squad 1, but I liked it so much that when they made a sequel, I had to buy the next one. It's another overhead arena-style fighter, but it has a bunch of different game modes to keep things exciting. Pico Park, I think this one is a pretty well-known one at this point. It's got a sequel now too. You work together by jumping on each other's head to get to the next area. Runbow is a quick 2D platformer where you're racing each other to the end of the stage. It's got all these fun, crazy colors too. I'm pretty sure this was 9 players on the Wii U, but it might just be 8 players everywhere else. Shipped, this one's fun. Don't let the little girls in the boat thing confuse you. It's a very innocent game. Stickbold, a dodgeball adventure. The only gripe I have with this one is I think you have to play through a lot of the single player mode to unlock stuff. So we're always playing just the multiplayer mode, so we're kind of limited on that. But aside from that, even with the simplicity of not unlocking anything, it's a crazy fun time. Towerfall, I'm pretty sure this is one of the ones that were originally made for the Ouya. Actually, come to think of it, I think there are a lot of games that ended up becoming big on the indie scene because they started off on the Ouya. Thankfully, they were able to get a second life. Towerfall specifically, I've played this one with gamers, I've played it with non-gamers, I've played it with casuals and hardcore alike. It is a very skill-based action game. And I'm pretty sure it's pretty popular too, so this is likely not anybody's introduction to it. All the ones I just mentioned were more than 4 players. They range from 5 to 8 players, and they're generally a hit regardless of how skilled or unskilled the whole group is. If I got a lot of people over, it's either one of these things or maybe Fibbage from the Jackbox Party Pack titles. But there are also 4-player games that I really like. Just a quick rapid fire. Duck Game. I think this one got up to 8 players with an update on Steam. I'm not sure if the Switch version got to 8 players yet. It's been a while since I played it, but for a solid year, this might have been a regular Saturday night game for us. You also have stuff like Screen Cheat, which gives you that old school split screen multiplayer gaming experience with a shooter, except you're invisible. So the whole premise of the game is to cheat and stare at the other person's screen. It is genius as far as I'm concerned. Ultimate Chicken Horse makes for a fun platforming type of competition. And perhaps the most enjoyable game, in my opinion, that has popped up that I had never heard of before I even played it, was Heave Ho. I think the first time I saw this one was on a Game Grumps episode, but I'm not sure. I don't even know how I learned about it, but man, this one, it's a co-op game where you work together, but there's all these funny faces and noises that are being made, and you're just swinging around. It's like one of those momentum-based physics games where you kind of have to swing yourself and let the momentum carry over to the next spot. You can play it safe and try to maneuver around by grabbing each other's hand to get through, but part of the fun of it is just seeing how much you can just send your guy flying. I highly recommend this one. Oh yeah, for the most part, those are the games that have stuck around. I usually download a bunch of these games ready to go whenever I have a game night, just to kind of test them out, get a feel for how much I enjoy them, how much everybody else is enjoying them. And then if they're not any good, I'll just uninstall them. But in general, it is guilt-free because they're pretty affordable, especially because they often go on sales and have discounts. And even if I don't like the game, at least I'm supporting the devs, and hopefully they can come back to the table with something that's more enjoyable. Or potentially it could be something that is already enjoyable, it's just not my cup of tea. Either way, a big reason why these games end up feeling as fun as they are is because their simple design actually makes them more enjoyable. Like, I have all of the multiplayer Mario games you would expect, your tennises, your parties, your karts, Smash Bros. But a lot of these games have grown to the point where they've become almost too complicated, or at least more difficult for a newcomer to enjoy with a veteran. The whole easy to pick up and hard to master thing is great, but because there is a level of mastering that takes you to the next step, it's not quite as fun to play with people that are newcomers. And you could argue that that's the whole point. You get good at a game and you play competitively with people that you want to compete against. But I would argue that with most modern day multiplayer games, it is hard to keep up with people. You gotta get in early, you gotta learn the metas, you gotta learn where to go and when to go there, you gotta master everything ahead of time. Otherwise, you're just target practice for the pros. I think games like Rocket League were fun to get into, for me at least, because it felt like the newbies were part of the fun. Now, I was never really any good at Rocket League, but I know that I got into it pretty late, and for the first, 100 or so games, I was being carried. But eventually I got to the point where I was actually contributing to the game. But I never felt like, oh, the rest of my team is bringing me down. It was just kind of like, okay, here's the skill level. That guy clearly doesn't know what he's doing. Let's find a way to make this work. And I think the dynamic of having a player that can fly in the air and control the ball perfectly, playing alongside a player that keeps reversing and accidentally scoring on themselves, just adds to the hilarity. But in many other games, that doesn't quite work. The point is, I think because these indie games know their crowd and they know it's not going to get a crazy huge competitive scene, and they know they only have really one chance to prove to you that this is a game that you're going to enjoy, they have to make it welcoming. They have to get right into the action. They have to put their strong cards right up front, laid out for you, so you know what to expect as you go forward. Now, this will often mean that when you get to the end of the game, it kind of starts to taper off a little bit. But in fairness, that could also happen when you're playing a AAA title. It's just nice because in this past generation of AAA titles that are varying in quality, and now they're going to be varying in price, part of the enjoyment of indie games is the experimentation. At least for me. Like, yeah, not everybody has time to mess around with these games, but honestly, sometimes it's a quick 5 minutes and you'll know if you like the game or not. And you can usually pick them up for like $1.99. And that's on the Switch. They're probably half of that if you buy it on PC. But at the very least, when I'm playing these games, I feel like I'm playing a game that's trying to impress me. Something that I feel like most AAA titles are no longer trying to do. Because they don't need to. That's just the reality, right? Everyone's buying in regardless. And I'm not saying it in a way of like, oh, this game's gotta try to make me happy. But this is an entertainment industry. I want to be entertained. For many people, the visuals might be enough. The music might be enough. The vibes might be enough. But I'm a gameplay first kind of person, and I just don't feel like modern gaming has as much of a focus on gameplay as previous generations did. It's kind of funny because legacy subscribers will know that I just recently went through Mario Galaxy 1 and I was in the process of going through Mario Galaxy 2 before all this stuff started hitting the fan. But my biggest argument for Super Mario Galaxy 2 was that objectively, the gameplay is more enjoyable. There are just more challenges in place. More creativity in the courses that you're running through. It's non-stop, pure platforming fun the way Miyamoto meant it to be in the 80s and 90s. Mario Galaxy 1 is a marvel. It's a spectacle. It's got the vibes. It's got the story. And I would argue it has moments that appeal to you from an emotional level more than Super Mario Galaxy 2. But for me at least, Galaxy 2 is just way better. But that's just how I feel, right? Like, I prioritize these kind of things and somebody else will prioritize something else, and it's okay. We can all love games in all the different ways that we want to. But that's why I like retro games that look like they were made on a floppy disk. And that's also why I love indie games. They find a way to make the visuals captivating, the music captivating, and especially the gameplay captivating without the budget. And that's the kind of passion I want back in the entertainment industry, in the video game industry specifically. Because as time has gone on, while there have been many games that have stuck out to be just these phenomenal masterpieces, even in the modern age, you get more and more garbage that you have to sift through, but you're not paying garbage prices. You're paying a premium for that garbage that is usually unfinished, usually going to require some kind of future payment, some kind of subscription plan to get the full experience. Additional content was initially appealing because it meant that in a few years after a game that is doing very well, they find a way to freshen it up. They find a way to breathe a little bit of new life into these games. But when they were making the game initially, they had the understanding that it was going to be a complete title. Now, they give you a half-baked, unfinished pie and hide the 400-degree setting on the oven behind a paywall. But that's just the lack of passion that goes into the AAA titles these days. Into many of them, at least. But again, an indie, if they give you an unfinished pie, you're gonna pick it up and throw it right in their face and ask for your money back. And they know that. And that's why they bake the pie, they make it as tasty as possible, they make it as appealing to the eyes as they can, with the perfect amount of whipped cream on top of it. Is anybody else getting hungry? Either way, I think I've gotten my point across. I've been going on about how I'm kind of done with all these AAA games and these titles, and I don't want to give any money to the gaming industry. And I kept mentioning how much I love my retro games and my retro games and my retro games. So I kind of felt like it was worth making this video because I love indie games. And I fully support any developer that's trying to get into the indie game world. Because I know you're fighting an uphill battle and I know you're putting your heart and soul into it. So if you are somebody that feels compelled to spend on games, you feel like you might not have enough games to play with, or you feel like you just want to buy some more stuff to kind of get your fill, I can't recommend it enough. Go indie as much as you can, because at some point, one of those darts will land right in the middle of the board. Thanks again for listening. I will catch you guys on the next one.